Hi, I'm Marc, and on this channel I talk about Brexit and UK politics. More than 1 million children in Britain live in severe poverty nowadays, and the number almost tripled from 2017 to 22. The charity Joseph Rowntree Foundation made the announcement last week. A total of 3.8 million lived in miserable conditions. Anyone who is unable to satisfy the most basic physical needs, that means to stay warm, dry, clean and fed, is considered to be in need. The reason for the significant increase was a combination of very low incomes, rising costs of living, and high debt, as the report said. In addition, the social system does not protect people. Only almost 3/4 of those in need receive aid at all. And according to the report, more than half of the affected households have a weekly income of less than £85. And singles between the age of 25 and 44 are particularly in need, but more and more families and older people are also slipping into extreme poverty. Such severe hardship should have no place in the UK today, and the British public will not tolerate misery on this scale. That was said by JRF Chief Executive Paul Kissack. He accused the Conservative government of refusing to take countermeasures here. The report highlighted that the welfare system is so full of gaps that charities such as food banks must try to save people from the worst of hardship. But the task is too big for them, they said. The government announced that it was investing a lot of money in social support, as well as job creation measures and free childcare. Aid organizations hope for an increase in social benefits in line with inflation. But the positive developments, if you want to talk about them, bring profits for completely different people today. And Brexit wasn't helping here either. Because if you want to understand why Great Britain is now abolishing the cap on banker bonuses, you have to rewind a good year. Back then, in the fall of 2022, a woman ruled Downing Street who had promised her country nothing less than an economic miracle, and that was Liz Truss. She wanted a country with low taxes, high growth, and maximum entrepreneurial freedom. But after less than 50 days, Truss had to resign. Not only was it the shortest term in the long history of British prime ministers, it was also the most, unnecessary. Truss has caused enormous damage to the United Kingdom with her ideologically motivated economic policies. It triggered chaos on the financial markets, which then caused immense damage to Britain's international reputation as well. It took some time for her successor Rishi Sunak to restore stability here in this part. He succeeded because he cancelled almost all of Truss projects. Of the few that remained, the issue of banker bonuses is the most striking. From October 31st, unlimited bonus payments are permitted again. I talked about this in another video already. The sense and nonsense of this decision can be debated for a long time, but one thing is certain. The government in London is not abolishing the so-called bonus cap primarily because it is economically convinced of it. They do it primarily for ideological reasons. The bonus cap dates back to the time when Great Britain was still an EU member. By abolishing this holdover, Sunak can announce what is otherwise extremely rare, a Brexit benefit. From the Prime Minister's point of view, the abolition of the bonus cap is symbolic of how his country can finally develop, virtually free from the shackles of EU bureaucracy. Well, the British financial regulator justifies the capping of the bonus limit by saying that it had unintended consequences. Because special payments were limited to twice the annual salary, and the banks ultimately had to increase the fixed salaries. And the result was, if the basic wage made up the largest part of the remuneration, the banks would have less leeway to adjust salaries in the event of poor performance or misconduct. And the Prime Minister doesn't want to anger his Tories. Well, that's understandable. That's correct, but in the end, it's about whether the bonus limit has weakened the financial center. And that is clearly not the case, I'm sorry. London can still compete with competitors like New York and Singapore with the cap, so that wasn't the problem. Anyone who speaks to the heads of major British banks will find out that opinions differ. Some consider an upper limit per se to be the work of the devil, others can live with it quite well. And the fact that Sunak is making no move to address the bonus issue publicly in the year before the next general election shows just one thing. He has no interest in incurring the wrath of Liz Truss and other party colleagues who think that he is too pro-EU anyway. And the Prime Minister, as I said, doesn't want to anger his Tories here. From a socio-political perspective, however, capping the bonus limit is a fatal signal. Many people are finding it difficult to pay their bills due to high inflation at the moment. And it is precisely in these times that the Prime Minister is doing a favor to all those who earn very well already. The majority of British bonus bankers would probably vote for the firmer investment banker Sunak either way. However, those who do not benefit from bonuses are now more likely to turn away from the Prime Minister if they hear about this. And his Tories are currently between 10 to 20% behind Labour, depending on the poll. And capping the bonus cap will not change this. The gap between rich and poor in the UK is already one of the largest in the developed world. And according to the Resolution Foundation, the richest 10% of households in the UK now own 44% of the country's wealth, while the poorest 50% own just 9%. And this gap has widened significantly in recent decades and has accelerated under the Conservative governments that have been in power since 2010. According to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the income gap between the richest and poorest 10% of households in the UK widened by 19% between 2010 and 2022. And there are a number of factors that have contributed to this widening gap under Tory rule. The Conservative government has cut taxes for the wealthy on multiple occasions since 2010. For example, the top tax rate of income tax was cut from 50 to 45% in 2012. The Conservative government has also made significant cuts to welfare benefits, which has disproportionately affected low-income households. And wages for low and middle-income earners have stagnated in those times, while the cost of living has continued to rise. And as we all know, housing costs have also risen significantly in recent years, making it more difficult for low-income households to afford to buy or even rent a home. The widening gap between rich and poor has indeed a number of negative consequences for the UK. It can lead to increased poverty and social exclusion, that's where we are at the beginning of the video again, as well as lower levels of economic growth and productivity. And it can also erode trust in institutions and democracy. The Conservative government has acknowledged that the gap between rich and poor is a problem, but has so far done little to address it. In fact, many of its policies have made the problem even worse. And it seriously remains to be seen whether this government will take any meaningful action to reduce inequality in the future, as long as they still have. And if you want to know something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.